welcome back once again to this, our fourth blog with regard to Wexford Paranormal, and in fact with regard to most paranormal groups and the types of equipment they use. Now, before we go into tonight's subject, which is temperature and the monitoring of temperature, whether it be ambient or surface temperatures, I just want to revert back to our last blog where we discussed the issue of the types of cameras we use, whether it's CCTV or digital cameras, night vision, etc, etc. Because some of you have messaged me since that, because we talked briefly about orbs in relation to the whole debate of orbs and what they are, and I mentioned dust and I mentioned moisture in the air, and certainly in probably what's 90% plus of the cases where you see these anomalies in photographs, it can be explained away in the most part by, as I said, dust or moisture, for example. However, the difficulty as well with digital photography and the debate and the issue of orbs is the fact that because a photograph is a two-dimensional image, it's very difficult to tell whether the orb, let's call it, that you're looking at is a large piece of dust far away from the camera, a small piece of dust close to the lens of the camera. So these are issues that present as difficulties as well. Now obviously if something's a small piece of dust or moisture in the air that's close to the lens, it's going to reflect the flash of the camera and therefore appear bright and luminescent and can mislead people into thinking that what they're looking at is in actual fact an orb. Now, that said, one of the techniques we use to try and address the measurement of that is we have a piece of software which allows us to gauge the depth in the picture that the white light comes from, so we can get some idea of where it's located in the depth of the image, whether it be a small piece of dust to the front or a larger piece further back in the image, because the software that we use creates a three-dimensional graph and identifies and locates the location of the white light, let's call it, at that stage. So let's move on to tonight's discussion. What I wanted to look at tonight is the temperature and the measurement of temperature, and why in fact temperature is something that paranormal investigators would tend to have a focus on. Now, the reason that we would look at temperature is that there are a lot of theories out there that suggest that when a spirit or an entity plans to manifest itself, it will draw energy from the atmosphere, and in doing so, in drawing that energy from the atmosphere, it will cause the temperature as a result to decrease. So you would notice sudden drops in temperature, and what we would be looking for really are temperatures 3, 4, 5 degrees and greater in a very fine and short space of time. For example, on one investigation that we did, and we'll look at this in a little bit, we had a team from a radio station, Southeast Radio, with us. We were in a dungeon of a castle and a very small confined space. There were, I think, around about 9 of us, and in that space for about 40 minutes during the time that we were there. In theory, you would assume that the temperature would rise because of body heat and so forth, but in actual fact, over the course of about 40 to 45 minutes, the temperature in the environment dropped a total of 10 degrees, which arguably is an unusual occurrence or an unusual experience that have happened on that night. Now, the way we measure temperature is quite simply, we use two devices. One is something like this, which is a non-contact infrared thermometer. What this does is it emits a red laser beam, and whatever surface you point that laser beam on, this device will give you the temperature on the surface of that object. Now, we can use this as well to measure cold spots, because if I shine it at a wall and the temperature of the wall happens to be 11 degrees, and then I take another reading quite soon after that and I find that it's 6 degrees, in theory there's a cold spot or something that wasn't there before between the thermometer and the surface of the wall that's giving me a different reading, and in this case a lower reading of temperature. Okay, to further validate the temperature readings we get from surface temperatures of walls, floors, ceilings, etc., we would also use an ambient thermometer. Now what that does is it measures the temperature in the atmosphere or in the area around the probe that's on that. Now on this one it's a millimeter, which also measures EMF, which we spoke about in a previous blog. So with this device I get the electromagnetic fields, if there are any, and also an ambient temperature read, so we can monitor if there's any fluctuations or any changes in the temperature of the environment. Also then measuring the temperature of the surface area and looking at correlations or contradictions that might exist between the two. Okay, so that's why temperature really is something we would look at from an investigation point of view. And as I said, it's driven by the notion, the theory or the idea that as a spirit manifests itself, the result of drawing the energy from the atmosphere is that it will cause the temperature to suddenly drop. Okay. Now here's that example we talked about. This was filmed in Enniscorthy Castle. We had some of the crew and broadcasters, DJs from South Australia with us, and here's a little bit of what happened just in terms of their experience with regard to the temperature observations on the night.
Are you okay, Jim? You're down about 3. You've gone down to 19 there now.
No, I don't particularly feel a change in temperature.
I'm asking,
temperature has gone down to 10.
we had an increase in EMF from 0 to 2.2 and then back to 0.
Oh my god, the sensation is unbelievable.
Certainly it's an interesting personal experience. It's
Yeah.
the type of experience people tend to report. From our point of view, what's interesting in addition to that is that we've had a drop of 9 degrees in the temperature around the location that you're in. And where there's activity, very often there's reports of a corresponding drop in temperature, which we had discussed before anyway. So I hope that that illustrated for you in some small way the effect of temperature and the experience for investigators and indeed first timers, as was the case with most of the crew, with regard to managing, monitoring and measuring temperature in the location, with regard to exploring the theories that exist around spirit activity, spirit manifestation and the relationship between that, the energy in the atmosphere and the result in temperature. In the meantime, if you'd like to find out more about what we do, you can visit our website, which is www.wexfordparanormal.org, or you can check out our Facebook page, which is simply Friends of Wexford Paranormal, and you'll find us there. Send us a request to join if you're not already a member. We'd love to see you with us, and any questions and comments you might have, we'd be happy to have you and share with us and with the group. So in the meantime, and until next time, stay safe out there, especially in the dark.